Samsung may have just made one of the best TVs of 2026 in terms of picture quality, but they have also made a design choice that's going to divide opinion immediately. The company's flagship S99H OLED features a large mid-gray metallic frame sitting immediately behind the QD-OLED panel, effectively creating the look of a thick bezel, at a time when most brands have been pushing towards ever thinner, almost invisible borders, including Samsung themselves with their infinity screen philosophy in previous years. The metal frame is reflective, it catches ambient light, and even in a pitch-black room, it doesn't fully disappear into the image the way a traditional black bezel would. This isn't a TV that's trying to blend into the background in the conventional sense. Instead, it's clearly designed to be wall-mounted, like an art frame. Combined with the matte surface coating and Samsung's Art Store support, it leans heavily into being a lifestyle product. Honestly, putting the TV on its 2 feet feels borderline criminal, because you are not seeing it as intended, and it doesn't do the design full justice. There has been speculation that the metal frame may act as a heatsink to dissipate heat and potentially reduce OLED burn-in. For what it's worth, we displayed a peak white window in HDR for 10 seconds, then switched to a full-field dark gray slide. The Samsung S99H cleared the resulting image retention at about the same rate as the LG G6, and initially manifested a slightly darker rim around the brighter after image. We also measured the metallic frame running a few degrees warmer after 30 minutes of sustained HDR playback. When it comes to naming, the Samsung S99H is sold as the S95H in the United States. Somewhat confusingly, there is also a Samsung S95H in Europe equipped with a One Connect box but not the large metal frame, which will probably appeal to more consumers. However, until it is measured, its HDR peak brightness may be lower than the S99H, and because the European S95H isn't launching in the UK at the time of this review, we do not expect to have the opportunity to verify that. Moving on to near black performance, this is where QD-OLED continues to demonstrate a clear advantage. Because there's no white subpixel, it is less likely to fall apart with heavily compressed low bitrate content compared to WOLED. On the S99H, near black handling is supremely elegant. There's no chrominance overshoot or flashing artifacts, significantly less macro blocking, and transitions involving fade-in from black are smooth without sudden jumps in luminance. As with previous Samsung QD-OLEDs, shadow detail is still slightly darker than reference, which we confirmed both through subjective viewing and objective measurements. It's not easy to correct. Increasing the shadow detail control even by one click raises the black floor and shifts the rest of the PQ EOTF tracking upwards. Using the 5% RGB adjustments in the 20-point white balance controls doesn't affect the lowest luminance range that needs addressing. So in practice, you're stuck with it. Without a reference display side by side, many casual viewers may prefer the more contrasty image, even though some of the lowest shadow detail is being lost in dark scenes. HDR performance is where the Samsung S99H really stands out. We measured peak brightness above 2800 nits on small window sizes up to 10% at T65 white point, and a full field brightness of 440 nits. In high APL scenes with bright backgrounds, the S99H can often look brighter than the LG G6, coming closer to matching the HDR10 presentation of the Sony BVM HX3110 mastering monitor, which is capable of 1000 nits full screen. Samsung's HDR10 tone mapping is based on Max MDL or Maximum Mastering Display Luminance, rather than Max CLL or Maximum Content Light Level metadata. Because the panel itself is so bright, this generally isn't an issue, except in the range between roughly 2000 and 3000 nits, where you may see some slight deviations in HDR movies inside a 4000 nit container. Tone mapping for 4000 nit content has improved compared to previous generations, retaining more specular highlight detail. However, the LG G6 still has an advantage in highlight delineation during certain HDR titles graded to 4000 nits, since it can exceed 3300 nits on very small window sizes. Even so, When you factor in QD-OLED's high color luminance without white subpixel dilution, the overall HDR impact is arguably superior on the Samsung S99H or USA S95H. This is currently the OLED to beat for HDR punch. In SDR, color accuracy is very good out of the box, with no inaccuracies exceeding delta error 3, which means they are not perceptible to the human eye in real-world moving video content. HDR color accuracy is less convincing, showing familiar traits from previous Samsung televisions. Color luminance accuracy has improved compared to last year's Samsung S95F and is no longer too dark. If anything, it is now slightly brighter in the green and yellow regions, which becomes apparent when compared directly to a reference monitor such as the Sony BVM-HX3110. In the most accurate HDR filmmaker mode out of the box, the color space setting on auto defaults to BT 2020. This is not as accurate as manually setting color space to custom and color gamut to DCI P3. However, doing so introduces more polarization at certain tones, even on pristine 4K Blu-rays, and reduces the wide color gamut coverage of above 90% BT 2020 to 73.75%, even though that still covers more than 99.5% of DCI P3. So it really is a case of choosing between better tracking accuracy or smoother gradation and wider gamut representation. Motion handling is a mixed bag. With picture clarity disabled, the TV applies proper 5.5 pull-down to 24p material, so there is no telecine judder. If you are sensitive to the mild inherent stutter of 24p films, you can set picture clarity to custom and use judder reduction at 1 or 2 to smooth it out without introducing obvious soap opera effect or SOE, though interpolation artifacts will start creeping in. Samsung has improved 24p HDR frame skipping compared to last year, including in the opening crawl in Star Wars. However, in prolonged slow dark pans, frame skipping can still occur once in a blue moon after a while. For 50Hz broadcast content, which is particularly relevant in the United Kingdom and other PAL regions, there is intermittent microstutter even with picture clarity set to off, which disables motion processing. This can be eliminated by using game mode, but that comes at the cost of worse color accuracy and video processing, and only applies to external HDMI sources. This is actually a regression compared to last year's S95F, and hopefully something Samsung can address with future firmware updates. For higher frame rate content such as sports at 50 or 60 frames per second, blur reduction can increase motion resolution from a sample and hold baseline of 300 lines up to approximately 650 lines. Engaging clear motion activates black frame insertion or BFI, which can push motion resolution to 1080 lines or higher but darken the picture and introduces flicker. In addition, when you enable BFI for 50Hz content, the TV forces judder reduction to 10, likely to mitigate frame rate conversion judder stemming from Samsung's 60Hz centric BFI implementation, which incurs heavy interpolation artifacts and soap opera effect. Video processing is generally strong. Upscaling of high-def content is sharp and clean, continuing the good work from the S95F without introducing significant artifacts. Upscaling of standard definition content at 480i or 576i is less accomplished, because overscan still cannot be disabled at these resolutions, resulting in a slightly softer image than necessary. In terms of film cadence detection, 3-2 cadence is handled correctly, but 2-2 cadence fails to maintain lock consistently. Therefore, especially for users in PAL regions watching 50Hz material, it is recommended to send a progressive rather than interlaced video signal to the TV for the best results. Native 10-bit gradation in pristine 4K HDR content is superb and possibly class-leading, as long as color gamut is not set to DCI P3, which, despite improving accuracy, is more prone to introducing polarization. For low bitrate material, enabling noise reduction helps smooth in content polarization, but it is quite heavy-handed and removes fine detail and film grain. Ideally, Samsung should introduce a less aggressive setting or a dedicated decontouring filter separate from the noise reduction control. We also observed some evidence of always-on noise reduction even when the setting is disabled, resulting in very slight softening in ultra-detailed 4K Blu-ray titles. Uniformity is another area where QD-OLED excels in bright scenes, with remarkable homogeneity, no visible banding, dirty screen effect or color tinting even off-axis, thanks largely to the top emission architecture. Dark uniformity is more average, with some vertical streaks visible not only on full-field near-black slides, but also in challenging low-light sequences such as those in Dune Part 2. Gaming performance is very impressive overall. With game mode enabled, input lag measures 9.5 milliseconds at 60 fps and drops to 5 milliseconds at 120 fps. Samsung's Game Motion Plus feature is still available for gamers who wish to play 30 fps games in a smoother manner. At level 1, input lag is 13.5 milliseconds, but this setting is as pointless as the P in pneumonia, because blur reduction and jitter reduction are both set to 0, so no interpolation is applied. At level 2, both controls are maxed out to 10, enabling interpolation, but input lag rises to above 40 milliseconds, which interestingly is higher than previous Samsung OLEDs and may put off some gamers from using this function. The S99H does not come with a One Connect box as standard, so all 4 HDMI ports on the TV itself support full 48 gigabits per second HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, together with 24 gigabits per second of DSC or Display Stream Compression bandwidth. There's no Dolby Vision gaming support, as Samsung TVs do not support Dolby Vision at all. That said, Dolby Vision game mode on TVs that do support it is often over-brightened relative to PQ anyway. With Game HDR set to basic to activate HGIG, the Samsung S99H or USA S95H hard clips at 2500 nits for both Max TML and Max FFTML, allowing for impactful HDR10 presentation in HGIG-compliant games without double tone mapping. The PQ EOTF in this mode is slightly brighter than reference, but lowering the ST2084 slider to -1 brings it closer to the PQ standard. One limitation is that engaging HGIG locks the game genre setting, so it cannot be set to original, meaning HDR color tracking is not as accurate as it could be. For PC use, you need to manually enable Input Signal Plus on the relevant HDMI port to unlock up to 4K 165Hz, and then engage game mode to allow VRR, which works well to eliminate tearing and frame drops. As with all OLED TVs, some VRR flicker is visible in certain scenarios, particularly on static menus. Native 10-bit gradation remains excellent at 4K 165Hz, although there's some slight additional shadow detail crushing compared to 4K 120Hz. Full 444 chroma is maintained in PC or game mode even at 4K 165Hz HDR VRR. Sound quality is the best we've heard from a Samsung OLED TV to date, with clear audio resolution, decent bass response, a relatively wide soundstage, possibly helped by the metallic frame increasing resonance and reflectance. Like the LG G6, it supports Dolby Atmos but not DTS audio decoding. Reflections-wise, there is no major perceptible difference compared to last year's S95F. The matte surface coating diffuses reflections effectively, but also raises black levels when hit by direct light, which is not helped by QD-OLED's lack of a polarizer owing to its top emission design. Let's sum up. The Samsung S99H is one of the best TVs you can buy in 2026 in terms of picture quality, provided you can look past its polarizing design. It delivers arguably the most impactful HDR of any OLED right now, thanks to its combination of high peak brightness and unrivaled color luminance. The TV is particularly strong for gaming, where full screen brightness and wide color gamut can be fully utilized, alongside low input lag and outstanding native 10-bit gradation in game mode. The Samsung S99H or USA S95H is also expected to be the highest spec QD-OLED television this year. The traditional strengths of QD-OLED are all present, including exceptional bright uniformity, very wide viewing angles that maintain contrast and color fidelity off-axis, high color luminance, and superior near-black handling due to the absence of white subpixel artifacts. Issues from last year, such as darker than reference color luminance and 24p HDR frame skipping on the S95F, have largely been addressed, and sound quality has improved as well. Because of these attributes, the Samsung S99H or USA S95H deservedly earns our highly recommended award. Of course, no TV is perfect. The S99H exhibits noticeable microstutter in certain 50Hz programs, especially relevant in regions like the UK, and color accuracy still lags behind some competing brands, particularly in game mode. If these motion and color issues were resolved, this could very well be the outright best TV of 2026 for picture quality, backed by the inherent advantages of QD-OLED technology. The continued absence of Dolby Vision will also divide opinion. While it is true that the more capable the display, the less dependent it is on dynamic metadata, it's also a fact that some Dolby Vision titles are mastered to a higher peak brightness than their HDR10 trims. So by not supporting Dolby Vision, you could be missing out on the creator's intended brightness and grading in those cases. That said, Dolby Vision implementations on other brands are not flawless either, with issues such as floating blacks and near black posterization still reported. If you're undecided about which TV to buy, one place where you can get good advice is at Richer Sounds, a trusted British AV retailer with more than 50 stores in the UK, who provides 6 years warranty on the vast majority of TVs if you join the company's VIP club. You will get the best deals through cheaper VIP exclusive in-store only prices, complimentary gifts or freebies, so go visit your local Richer Sounds store or call telesales for your next TV purchase. Thanks again for your support. Okay, if you are considering buying the Samsung S99H or USA S95H QD-OLED, you may be wondering how it compares to the LG G6 OLED. To help you decide, I've done a side-by-side comparison video you can watch by clicking here.